Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava, Radha Madhava, Shri Radhe. Jaya Radha Damodara, Radha Damodara, Shri Radhe. Jaya Lalita Vishaka, Lalita Vishaka, Shri Radhe. Jaya Nithai Gaura Sundara, Nithai Gaura Sundar, Gaura Hari. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudire. Nashtaprayasya Bhradeshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naishtuki. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 5th canto, entitled The Creative Impetus, chapter number 1, text number 38. Para devata prasidadi katatma pratyayavam marshenanu pravetyabhya putrabhya imam yathadayam vibhajaya bhukta ogam cha sim mitikam eva sahamaha vibhutim apaya swayam nihata nirvedo ridhi grihata harir viharano bhavo Bhagavato Naradasya Padavim Punar Eva Nusasara. Word for word, synonyms. Paradevata, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Prashada, by the mercy. Adigat, obtained. Atma, Pratya Vam Marshena, by self-realization. Anu Pravartyabhya, who exactly follow his path. Putrabhya, unto his son. Imam, this earth. Yatha Dayam, exactly according to the inheritance. Vibhaja, dividing. Bhukta Bhogam, whom he enjoyed in so many ways. Cha, also. Mahisim, the queen. Mrittakam Eva, exactly like a dead body. Saha, with. Maha Vibhutim, great opulence. Apaya, giving up. Swayam, himself. Nihita, perfectly taken to. Nirveda, renunciation. Riddhi, in the heart. Grihita, accepted. Hari, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Vihara, pastimes. Anubhava, in such an attitude. Bhagavata, of the great saintly person. Naradasya, of Saint Narad. Padavim, position. Puna, again. Eva, certainly, Anusasara, began to follow. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation. By the grace of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Maharaj Priyavat reawakened to his senses. He divided all his earthly possessions among his obedient sons. He gave up everything, including his wife, with whom he had enjoyed so much sense gratification, and his great and opulent kingdom, and he completely renounced all attachment. His heart, having been cleansed, became a place of pastimes for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus, he was able to return to the path of Krishna consciousness, spiritual life, and resume the position he had attained by the grace of the great Saint Narada. Purport. As enunciated by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the Shishatak, Cheto Darpana Marjanam Tava Mahadavani Nirvapanam. As soon as one's heart is cleansed, the blazing fire of material existence is immediately extinguished. Our hearts are meant for the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This means that one should be fully Krishna conscious, thinking of Krishna as he himself advises, Mana Mana Bhava Madabhakta Madajaji Mam Namaskuru. Thus, this should be our only business. One whose heart is not clean cannot think of the transcendental pastimes of the Supreme Lord. But if one can once again place the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his heart, he very easily becomes qualified to renounce material attachment. Mayavadi philosophers, yogis, and jnanis try to give up this material world simply by saying, Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya. This world is false, there is no use of it, let us take to Brahman, or Brahman. Such theoretical knowledge will not help us. If we believe that Brahman is the real truth, we have to place within our hearts the lotus feet of Sri Krishna as Maharaj Ambrish did. Savai Mana Krishna Padara Vindayo. One has to fix the lotus feet of the Lord within his heart. Then he gets the strength to be freed from material entanglement. Maharaj Priyavat was able to give up his opulent kingdom, and he also gave up the association of his beautiful wife as if she were a dead body. However beautiful one's wife and however attractive her bodily features, one is no longer interested in her when her body is dead. We praise a beautiful woman for her body, but the same body, when bereft of a spirit soul, is no longer interesting to any lusty man. Maharaj Priyavata was so strong by the grace of the Lord that even though his beautiful wife was alive, he could give up her association exactly like one who is forced to give up the association of a dead wife. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, Na dhanam, na janam, na sandarim, kavitam ma va jagadeshe kame, mama janmani janmaneshware, bhavatat bhaktir haithukitavehi. Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your causeless devotion service, birth after birth. For one who desires to advance in spiritual life, attachment to material and attachment to a beautiful wife are two great impediments. Such attachments are condemned even more than suicide. Therefore, anyone desiring to cross beyond material nescience must, by the grace of Krishna, be freed from attachment to women and money. When Maharaj Priyavat became completely free from these attachments, he could again peacefully follow the principles instructed by the great sage Narada.
Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhu, can you hear me?
Yeah, I want to say unless I've slipped into some kind of a mystical time warp, I am near certain that today's verse is text 37.
Oh, Now that's my bad because I'm just looking at what Sarvatma Prabhu sent to me in a spreadsheet. And let me just double check. It does say March 2nd today, right? Thursday, 5.138.
Yeah, that may be because we, on one day, we did 2 verses.
I see. So 37 is something I need to do. Let me see. Okay. Yeah, my apologies as well. I was just told yesterday, and the spreadsheet also came out just yesterday as well. So it didn't give me much time to prep up. Let me just double check.
Not a big problem. I would just forge ahead. Maybe if you have, if there's time, you can read through text 37, but
Sure,
I guess
Prabhu.
you should carry on with whatever you have prepared to do, I suppose. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you so much. Of course, I'm gonna follow your instructions. I feel like I'm protected when I do that. I'm gonna. So yeah, let's do text 37 at least. Let's read it, and then we just move on. If you'd like to excuse me, I'm just gonna switch off the heating. It's getting really hot in this room. My apologies. Okay. Okay, let's read 5.1.37, text 37. Aho asadvadu sitam anustitam yad abhinavesito aham indraya avidya richata visama visayadha yanda kupe tad alam amusya vanitaya vinodamrigam mam dig titi garhayam chakara. I just, for the interest of time, I'm just going to go straight to the translation paper. The king thus began criticizing himself. Alas, how condemned I have become because of my sense gratification. I have now fallen into material enjoyment, which is exactly like a covered well. I have had enough. I am not going to enjoy anymore. Just see how I have become like a dancing monkey in the hands of my wife. Because of this, I am condemned. Therefore, how condemned is the advancement of material knowledge can be understood by the behavior of Maharaj Brihavat. He performed such wonderful acts as creating another sun, which shined during the night, and creating a chariot so great that its wheels formed vast oceans. These activities are so great that modern scientists cannot even imagine how such things can be done. Maharaj Brihavat acted like very wonderfully in the material field of activities, but because he was dealing with sense gratification, ruling his kingdom, and dancing in the indications of his beautiful wife, he personally condemned himself. When we think about the example of Maharaj Brihavat, we can just consider how degraded is the modern civilization and material advancement. Modern so-called scientists and other materialists are very satisfied because they can construct great bridges, roads, and machines, but such activities are nothing comparable to those of Maharaj Brihavat. If Maharaj Brihavat could condemn himself in spite of his wonderful activities, how condemned we are in our so-called advancement of material civilization. We can conclude that such advancement has nothing to do with the problems of living entities' entanglement with this world. Unfortunately, modern man does not understand his entanglement, and how condemned he is, nor does he know what kind of body he is going to have in his next life. From a spiritual point of view, a great kingdom, beautiful wife, and wonderful material activities are all impediments to spiritual advancement. Maharaj Brihavat had served the great sage Narada sincerely. Therefore, even though he had accepted material opulence, he could not be deviated from his own task. He became Krishna consciousness as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. Neho brikama nasatosti pratyayavo Na vidyate svalpam apayasya dharmasya prayate mahato bhayat. In devotion service, there is no loss or diminution, and even a small service rendered in devotion service is sufficient to save one from the greatest danger. Such renunciation as Maharaj Priyavata's is possible only by the grace of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Generally, when people are powerful, when they have a beautiful wife, a beautiful home, and material popularity, they become more and more entangled. Priyavata Maharaj, however, having been completely trained by the great sage Narada, revived his Krishna consciousness in spite of all impediments. Om Jnana Timirandasya Ganinjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Shtapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadanti Swapadantikam Mukam Kurati Vachalam Pangolam Veti Girim Yat Kripatamaham Vande Shri Guru Dinatarani. So thank you for joining us in this great presentation of Bhagavatam, specifically the activities of a Grihasta. Very great presentation here by Srila Prabhupada, talking about the dangers of Grihasta life or Grihasta life. Of course, a Grihasta definition is that, you know, all the activities both the husband and wife do is centered around Krishna. Whereas a Grihameda is centered around their own sense gratification. So here, Srila Prabhupada is reminding us that even a great personality like Priyavata Maharaj is also condemning himself in many, many ways, thinking how much he feels that he's not up to scratch to what it's like to be Krishna conscious. At the same time, he was given this role by the Acharyas, by Lord Brahma, Lord Indra, even by Narad Muni to some extent. So it reminds us that when one is instructed or when one is trained by these great Acharyas, great personalities, one is protected, because if they're instructed by these personalities, okay, go and get married, you know, procreate, rule the kingdom, create these lands, etc. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like what they're actually telling him to do is become entangled. But again, this is actually to create, it's a service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, even though it looks like from an external point of view, something that's materialistic. So this is where, you know, more living entities can come into the world, and look at the personality, look at the qualities, look at the quality of the sons and daughter that he created. Some of them, most of them were renunciates, well-trained, etc. Paramahamsas. So we read this in the previous text. So again, it's super, super powerful. Of course, Grihasta these days, household life is very, very, it's a misnomer, right? Nowadays, I know a lot of people, especially in Hinduism, where they say my work is my worship. You know, like if I work hard enough, if I bring up my kids, if I, you know, love my wife, all this is religion to me. Work is my worship. But we understand this to mean that they actually think that this is karma yoga. I'm talking about the general man. They think that if I do this really well, if I do everything perfectly, I am Krishna conscious. But this is not so. I was hearing one lecture where Maharaj was talking about his uncle. His uncle had a convenience store. In England, they call it the Patel Corner Shop. But the convenience store, he clocked in at 5 a.m. and he clocked out something like 9 p.m. So he was doing long hours, and he was doing that for 60 years, non-stop. Incredible. So one actually looks at that and says, wow, what dedication. This person is so fixed, and so he's like almost like a yogi, kind of in terms of what he does. No holidays, 60 years straight, etc. So he's a nice person, no problem. I'm not knocking him. He's a great person in terms of discipline. But we can't really call him someone who's a karma yogi, right? Or even a bhakti yogi. Karma yogi definition, according to Bhagavad Gita, is that one who gives the results of his work, phala, to Krishna. So we have to just analyze that side of things and think about it in that sense, that is he really giving up any of his portion of his work to Krishna? Also, I want to give my example. My father, he worked really, really hard, invested in his family. Luckily, he also introduced us to God. I have two sisters, so he introduced us to Krishna very, very early, at the age of, I believe, at the age of 4 or 5 for me. And of course, my sisters were also trained up very, very nicely. So just that little training that he did helped him because we ended up chanting in front, chanting and reading scriptures on his deathbed. So it's amazing that when one becomes a grihasta, the investment that he has into his children, into his family, in terms of bringing them into Krishna consciousness, it comes back many, many folds. So that's interesting to kind of see that. So Maharaj Priyavata, created so many wonderful activities, and yet we revel in our so-called material advancement. So it's amazing to see how even all these wonderful activities that Maharaj Priyavata did, even then he felt like this is not enough. I shouldn't be doing this. This is condemning. This is entanglement. Whereas material civilization is like, oh, happy. Look, I created this. I created that. One thing I was thinking about this is that one may argue that Srila Prabhupada criticizes scientists. The scientists actually, why should he create? The argument is, why should he criticize scientists? Prabhupada is not actually criticizing the scientists. He's actually criticizing the scientism behind it. For example, one may argue that, hey, look at that, we create cars. You use your cars for service. So is science really bad? Or we create fridges, or we create, so many things, TVs, phones. All these things are created by scientists. But these scientists create these things and they'll help in terms of Krishna consciousness. So why is science a bad thing? So one has to understand that Prabhupada wasn't criticizing that portion of the science. He was criticizing the scientism behind it, meaning don't try to replace God with science. That's the point here. The scientists are kind of getting above themselves, right? Or beyond themselves, punching beyond their weight. They're thinking that, hey, today we're creating this, we're creating that, but tomorrow we're going to also figure out, or theorize at least, the source of creation, because that's how advanced we are. So that's the thing here. Prabhupada was never criticizing the scientist in that way. He was actually talking against the science behind that. Everything's origin is science in a sense as well. So those are a few points in this purport. So it's interesting also that Srila Prabhupada makes the point that from a spiritual point of view, a great kingdom, beautiful wife, and wonderful material activities are all impediments to spiritual advancement. But sometimes we also think, sometimes it can happen, even as devotees, that, hey, I've achieved so much. I've created all these things everywhere. I've got a business. I must be very, very pious to have a very, very beautiful wife. But if you look at it in another, or a beautiful partner, shall I say. So yeah, if we look at it one way, yes, the acts of piety, there might be, but it also, there are impediments to spiritual advancement. Why? Because if we get distracted by these things, and we don't see the real position or the real aim of all these faculties in our lives, then what happens is we can get distracted, and it can happen so easily. The main disease is that aham ishwar, aham bhogi. I am the controller and I am the enjoyer. It happens at a very subtle level. Even in spiritual life, one may be attracted to fame, name, fame, honor. We just love it. Sometimes when we hear our name, when we give donations, or sometimes, you know, when we do nice kirtan, we're like, Prabhu, that was great kirtan, or a wonderful class, or you're so scholarly. These are all amazing glorifications that are given to from devotees to devotees as an act of love. It's priti lakshanam. It's a form of encouragement. But our personal mood should be, you know, I mean, our humble mood should be that, hey, look, this person must be so great that he can glorify someone like me. So that should be our mood, that, oh, look at that, I'm so fallen, but this person is so great that is glorifying someone like me in this way. So that should be our real position. We should not get enamored by glorification, but we should be feeling gratefulness that this person can see something great in us, even though there isn't any, in that way. And also we should see the love behind what they're trying to say. That's more important, instead of taking it for factual, what they're saying. Because our real glory is devotional service. Our real glory is love for Godhead. Not only should we be Krishna conscious, but we should be Krishna confident, right? We should be confident that we are devotees, and that's our only position, and we should be happy in that. And that's the only thing that's going to make us happy. It's not going to be titles, positions, etc. Even in ISKCON, it won't be titles and positions and everything. That's not going to save us from the greatest danger. That's not going to take us back to Godhead. It's our consciousness that's going to be thoroughly tested at the time of death. So it's really important that we understand that. And the other point is that Maharaj Priyavata was trained by Narada Muni. So that's really key here, that even before he took on all these responsibilities, because he was trained, he was instructed in a very nice and solid way, he never forgot. It's like a little service. There was no loss or diminution. Even though he had so many material assets, he never got distracted. And the hankering in his heart, that hole in his heart, was still, he saw that even after, despite having all this kingly wealth, everything he had, some of the things that even, you know, we aspire for. Sometimes we think, oh, I'm a devotee, I don't have all these things that other devotees have, or what a normal karmi would have. I don't have these things. All these things are a lamentation to a devotee, and that's so special to see that despite everything, there's still something. There's a missing link within that heart. There was an interesting clip that I saw where a man he's a multimillionaire, he has everything, but he was actually getting interviewed, and the host actually asked him, "Are you happy?" And the man was just saying, "You know what? How many Rolex watches can you buy? How many cars can you have? How many clothes can you have?" It's unbelievable. I mean, like, you know, sure, I've got money, but you know, how much can I actually wear at any one time? I mean, it just gets boring. So it's incredible to see that even wealthy people are not exactly happy. You know, look at Japan. It's one of the wealthiest countries in the world, and yet there's suicides. So it actually proves that wealth cannot bring any kind of happiness. Even having a beautiful partner, usually what happens is after 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years, you see the same face again and again. It can get tiring. I'm not saying that by my wife, I'll be in trouble, but what I'm really saying is that we have to go beyond the bodily, the bodily cosmetic side of things, right? The superficial side of things, which means we fall in love with our partner for their ability to remind us that Krishna is the Supreme Person of Godhead, and to develop relationship with them. They're our partner second. They're not our partner first. They're our partner second. They're a devotee first. That's how we should be looking at things. So that's the key here, that if we get deeper and deeper in our relationships, it's more to do with seeing them every day more and more as they're a servant of Krishna and we're a servant of Krishna. In that way, it's possible to have that higher dimensions of relationships and more powerful. And we'll see that in the next purport. Despite the way Maharaj Priyavata gave up his wife, it was exactly like she was a dead body. So it's a really powerful statement there, because she's living, she's still living, she exists. And the way he gave her up was just like, you're as good as dead. So it's really, really powerful here that that purport that Srila Prabhupada wrote on this, that usually a dead person is no longer interesting to a lusty man. It's important here that lusty man, that's the point here, right? No matter how lusty you are, you won't find a dead body attractive in any way. I've been on a lot of, I've been around a lot of people that gave up or passing on or gave up their body. Once they passed away, I didn't want to hug them anymore, or I was all over them when they were passing. I was like, oh, I can't live without you, or, I was just so sad to see them go. But when they're gone, it's like rigor mortis, kicks in. It's one of the most painful portions, because you realize that, oh, this body is actually temporary. It's just a vehicle. It's a tool that the soul used to get realized or to elevate themselves. So again, it's once we see the reality that this body is just an outer covering, and that's one of the best ways to see that is to be in someone's deathbed, unfortunately. But when you see that kind of mystical experience, it's amazing, because you actually see that, wow, the soul is gone. That's what I was attached to, really, because the body is there. Why can't I have a relationship? Why can't I have the same bond that I had? And you can't have a bond or a relationship with something that's dead. So the way Maharaj Priyavata gave up his opulent kingdom, his association with his beautiful wife, was exactly like they didn't mean anything to him in that way, in that sense. So there was a few points there. Interesting that Srila Prabhupada talks about that the Lord is established within the heart, right? Krishna is willingly going to dance in your heart when one's mind, our heart becomes pure. Cheto darpana marjana bhava maha davagni nirvapanam. As soon as one's heart is cleansed, our hearts are meant for the pastime of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is again a symptom of someone that's chanting very, very nicely, really, really getting attracted, waking up early in the morning, attending morning program, purifying the heart. Very, very important morning program. If one can attend morning program every day, it becomes easier as well. One of my close friends told me in England that it's amazing Mangalarti is, when one attends Mangalarti, it's like the whole day is set up. So it's mystical how Krishna sometimes manufactures more and more time for you when this happens. Srila Prabhupada talked about not to waste a single second. Never to waste time. Srila Prabhupada even felt that sleeping was a waste of time for him. He's like, oh, I slept too long. I slept for 2 hours. I slept too long. There's so much service to be done. So for a pure devotee, they are timeless. They don't act on the time that's familiar for us. But what they're doing in that time, they're spending it in Krishna consciousness. They're spending it with a purified heart. They're actually spending it in service of Krishna. So the higher taste is there. So whenever we're chanting or reading or doing service, associating with devotees, when we got a difficult project on that we have to do somehow, when something feels challenging, it's important that we remember, why are we doing it? We're doing it because we want the Lord to be established within the heart. Because once our mind and our heart becomes purified, the Lord actually is placed within it. There's a beautiful verse in Nrsimha Kavach. It says, Kamala Vasvam. It says that the Lord Nrsimha, is placed in the heart, in the lotus heart. So one meditates on Lord Nrsimha with a purified mind. Lord Nrsimha manifests in the heart. So he finds it as a very, very nice place for him to come in. And that's the thing, we can all establish the main deity within ourselves, right? So we can cooperate with that deity and serve him in that way. So it's very, very important that we all have a purified heart, and in that way, serve them. Wherever we go, we take Vrindavan with us. And that's a very, very high stage, because essentially what we're really saying is one needs to first purify the heart. The other point I kind of want to make is that what I actually learned from this verse is that having a partner, having a grihastha partnership is not it's not always a distracting thing. What I mean by that is, if your goals are similar, if you both have that target and goal that you both want to be really, really Krishna conscious, then it becomes very, very easy. One teacher told me that, like, I asked, when I was getting married, I asked him, what do I do? What is the duty of the husband? And he told me two things. He said to me, number one, control your senses, and number two, be very emotionally sensitive. So I was thinking, those things are contradictory. How can one be controlled in the senses at the same time be very sensitive? I felt that was a contradiction. But then after, I never understood what it meant until, like, a few years. I learned, I'm a third class person, so I actually hear, when I experience something, I learn. That's the way I work. But what he meant by that was one needs to be fully sense controlled. That's obvious. That's something that's written in the scriptures, but I never understood the second portion, which is emotionally sensitive. So what that meant later on, where I found out, is that what that meant was that one needs to be empathetic and understand the heart of the other person, what they want, what they feel, emotionally process that. So if one person becomes a very good grihastha when they first become emotionally controlled, right, sense controlled, at the same time be in touch with their feelings. So that's two things. It sounds oxymoron, but it's actually two different things. So one can decide when they want to express certain feelings, but that doesn't mean they're not in touch with their emotions. So it's two things here, not just one. Nowadays, there is a propaganda out there, or there is, what's it called, the hashtag or something. It's like this popular thing that's out there right now, that men are no longer in touch with their feelings, and that's the main thing. We should be in touch with our feelings. That's important, but the main thing that also is important is that the ability to control the emotions. If we can do that, then naturally we become this pillar and we become strong, and one can still have the touch with emotions if they need to. The question then comes up is that when Srila Prabhupada says that one cannot be a good grihastha if one is not a good brahmachari, and we naturally see this as a contradiction as well. We think, what, a brahmachari is actually supposed to be separate from the opposite gender. Why is Srila Prabhupada saying that if one is not a good brahmachari, he can never become a good grihastha? Or vice versa, if one is a good brahmachari, then he should be a good grihastha. So let's unpack that a bit. Usually a brahmachari, if he's strictly following, he will follow the four regs strictly, even in a subtle level. When that happens, all the vital fluids are inside him, very strong. And when that happens, one actually becomes one has the ability to process their own emotions. When that happens, one becomes sensitive to others' emotions. So when they do get married, they actually know exactly what it's like to process emotions in themselves and in others as well. So usually what happens if one is a very weak brahmachari, they tend to break the regs, the regulative principles in some way. And when that happens, they get lazy emotionally. And when they get lazy emotionally, they actually don't get to look at the deeper levels of all sides of emotions. They just resort to breaking the four regs. It's like their venting system. So women in that way, yeah, definitely they are more in touch with their feelings because they don't have that ability to just vent or break the four regs in that way where they give up vital fluids. Men do. So it's very, very important to understand that when one becomes a very, very strong brahmachari, the ability to process those emotions now leaks into when they're married, they can actually have things in common with their partner. And in that way, they can actually understand and be very, very peaceful. So it's very, very strong that your wife or your partner sees you as a pillar of Krishna consciousness. In that way, there's a direction in terms of spiritual life. All right, so it's 7:45. I must stop here and pause to ask if there's any questions. Oh, we've got a big turn up today. Thank you so much for coming. Very nice. Bhagavatam enthusiast. It's great. Yeah. Yes, Prabhu.
Thank you for a nice class. Nice meditation. I appreciate your appreciations of Srila Prabhupada's purport and illuminations of some of his statements. Gave me food for thought, some nice subject matter to contemplate during the day. With regards to success in household life, I think another important thing to derive from Srila Prabhupada's purport, he's talking about the importance of placing the Lord within your heart. And he says, our hearts are meant for the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This means that one should be fully Krishna conscious, thinking of Krishna as he himself advises, Manmanabhava Mad Bhakto. I'm a poor example of a grihastha, but my years of grihastha life have concluded with this understanding that the foundation of a successful marriage must be Krishna consciousness, just simply to actually be conscious of Krishna as fully as possible. That is the best foundation for success in a Krishna conscious marriage. A Krishna conscious individual will understand his partner or her partner to be part and parcel of Krishna, and will respect that individual as such, and therefore be disinclined to exploit that individual for sense gratification. A Krishna conscious person is automatically going to be sensitive to the feelings and the needs of others. He'll automatically be compassionate. All of the good qualities of an individual all these the demigods are all manifest in the person of an individual who has cultivated Krishna consciousness. So there's lots of ways to artificially attempt to create a happy, cooperative, and peaceful, productive situation, but they don't necessarily succeed. But the most powerful process, and it really is a panacea. It's the key to virtually everything for success in any sphere of life. Doesn't matter what it is. Krishna consciousness is the key to absolutely everything. It perfects your life, and it enables you to perfectly address any issue and tackle any sort of task. Towards that end, you mentioned the morning program, which is something that I think about very often, because I've seen over the years in ISKCON that sometimes temple morning programs are not necessarily real well attended, and sometimes I've had discussions with various GBCs about this, because it really is their responsibility to ensure that these standards are maintained. But Prabhupada's standards were pretty strict about these things. He insisted that all of his disciples attend the full morning program every day. Sometimes we had householders who had to go to work early in the morning, and I remember that they used to come to the greeting of the deities dressed for work. You know, they would have their devotional attire on for the first part of the morning program, and sometime during the japa period, they'd disappear, and then they'd come back in a suit, tie, and so that they could bolt out the door right after greeting the deities and Guru Puja. They get to work on time, but everyone attended the morning program. Srila Prabhupada instructed us that if somehow or other someone, due to illness or whatever, is unable to attend Mangala Arti, that his godbrothers should pick him up and bodily carry him to the temple room. And I have practical experience. There were times when I was very sick with the flu or whatever. When I first became a devotee, I used to get really high fevers every 2 weeks. My health was rather poor at the time, and still is poor. But on several occasions, that the ashram was on the 4th floor, and the devotees would pick me up and carry me down 4 flights of steps to the temple room, prop me up against a pillar, and attendance was mandatory under all circumstances. And after years of attending the morning program, I acquired a great taste for especially Mangala Arti, and later on, I became very attached to leading the kirtan for Mangala Arti. I would make sure that I got to the temple room early and seize the mridanga and situate myself in front of the microphone to make sure that no one else got to lead, because the sweetness of chanting, particularly Garvashtakam in the morning, is just so extremely wonderful. It's just unbelievable. It's a veritable banquet of transcendental tastes in those prayers. There is everything, and I've meditated on this for years. I had an experience when I was Prabhupada in Hyderabad. I don't want to make this story too long, but he was emphasizing to the temple president one morning, there had not been the Mangala Arti Kirtan, because the temple was newly constructed, actually still under construction. The deities were not yet installed. The temple room was a construction site with debris everywhere. You couldn't even find a place to stand. And Srila Prabhupada had just arrived, and the first morning, he noticed that there was no Mangala Artik, and the devotees were all working very hard, and they had dispensed with aspects of the morning program. This was just a day before the actual opening of the temple, so the devotees were in a panic trying to get everything in place. And Srila Prabhupada understood all these things, but when he saw that there was no Mangala Artik, in spite of all the extenuating circumstances and all of the difficulty, he was really upset. And if you haven't had experience of being in Srila Prabhupada's presence when he is upset about something, let me tell you, it is absolutely terrifying. I have seen grown men reduced to a quivering mass of tears by Srila Prabhupada, pounding his fist and bellowing at a very high decibel, very, very upset. And he was blasting the temple president. I was cleaning the floor right at Srila Prabhupada's feet at the time, as Srila Prabhupada began to unleash his fury on the temple president. And he blasted him, saying, that I am attending Mangala Artik every single day. Do you think that you are better than your spiritual master? Those words are etched into my mind. I will never forget that moment and those words. And they have haunted me throughout my life. There have been some times when I was neglectful of the morning program. But at this point, I am physically unable to get to the temple every morning, but I have my morning program from my bed every single day, without fail. I am always up by 3:30, 4 o'clock, usually much earlier than that, 2 o'clock, even earlier. I get up pretty early. And every morning I have the most delicious Mangala Arti Kirtan. And it just gets sweeter and sweeter every day. Those sound vibrations that I hear from the Gurvashika prayers carry me through all of every day. And they form not only the foundation of my Krishna consciousness each day, but my realization is that when we are singing Samsara Davananda Lida Loka, Trinaya Karunya Ganaganatvam, that the spiritual master is extinguishing the blazing fire of material existence, just like a cloud pours water on a forest fire. My realization is that at that very moment that you are singing those prayers, that is when the spiritual master is distributing that mercy. He particularly is distributing his mercy when you're chanting those prayers at that hour of the morning. And if you miss that, if you're not there and you don't get the benefit of the mercy that he's distributing at that particular moment, you are greatly disadvantaged. That's my realization. Srila Prabhupada explained this actually many times, but he on a few occasions he explained that the way that he had a particular way in which he would judge new devotees, trying to ascertain who was sincere and who was less sincere. He would give his time and attention to the sincere. He would show them all of his mercy and help them in every conceivable way. And there were sometimes people who would come that were less sincere, and he wouldn't bother with them. He wouldn't waste his time because his time was very precious. So he had to choose, where to invest his time. So he explained that the way he would distinguish between the sincere and the insincere is by looking to see whether they would show up for a Mangala Artik. Those who came to Mangala Artik, he understood this is a sincere individual. And others who, for whatever reason, they couldn't make it to Mangala Artik, he understood these are less sincere individuals. That was his criteria. So something to think about. Anyway,
Yeah, very powerful. Thank you,
You
Prabhu.
won't see me in the temple room, but you may know for certain that every day at 4:30 on the dot, I am beginning my Mangala Arti Kirtan. Never miss it. Never, ever, ever miss it.
Sure. I do see your light. I do see your light switched on in the room. So when I walk past, so definitely.
Yeah, sometimes I fail to turn the light on, but because it's hard for me to reach the switch, I have to use a stick to reach behind me to get the light switch. But because my family regrettably does not always join me in Mangala Arti, but yes, as long as I've been here at Gita Nagari, I have not missed a day.
Sure.
And if I do miss a day, then I must be extremely ill, or you can understand that I may have expired, because it means so much to me. I would just never miss that. It is the biggest event in my entire day, every day. So I encourage others to try to acquire a taste for this practice. If you know you're not regularly doing, do that regularly, and when you do, then your spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada particularly, and Krishna himself will see your activity and count you amongst the sincere, and then there is wonderful reciprocation from the Lord. It's not simply an austerity, it is recreation. It is, as I say, it is a banquet of transcendental taste that will give you the strength to overcome anything. It will supercharge every aspect of your life and give you the power to accomplish anything in Krishna consciousness. Everything becomes easy, and but there is a reciprocation. The Lord will reciprocate that effort. You just have to be there. Just be there somehow or other. If you can't be in the temple room, then wherever you are, have your Mangala Arti at the appropriate time, and that is greatly appreciated by the entire Guru Parampara and Krishna himself. You'll be counted amongst the sincere and rewarded handsomely. That's all I've got. Thanks again. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. That was so wonderful. That's very powerful. I love the way you mentioned that Mangala Arati is so important, and how you kind of grab hold of the madanga and the kartals before anyone else did. Here in Gita Nagari, especially at the temple room, I think it's so scarce that everyone has first dibs on the madanga or kartal. So we're trying to let's create that competition here if we can. So thank you, Prabhu. We're going to wait for the deity greetings. So as soon as the screen is shared, we'll conclude there, if that's okay. Anyone else had any questions or realizations, comments?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you so much for this class. Very wonderful points covered, and a lot of clarification of various things. And Tarka Prabhu's comments were really wonderful also. Sharing his realizations and Prabhupada's experiences with Prabhupada. And I like that point about the morning program. One of the things you mentioned, Sri Golok Prabhu, in the class, which was really powerful to me, was the two duties of a husband you were talking about: controlling the senses and being very sensitive. And you made the point that being in touch with our own emotions and being able to process our own emotions helps us to be able to be in touch with and process others' emotions as well. So therefore a good brahmachari who's able to do that can also have that type of exchange and sensitivity for the mate. And so you were talking about well, something you said you had mentioned there made me think of how there's sometimes it can be misunderstood that controlling the senses is denying emotions, you know.
Yeah.
And but controlling the senses also is required. To control the senses, we have to be in touch with our emotions, as you were saying earlier. But when we hear verses like when Kunti's praying in the 8th chapter of the 1st canto about cutting off the affection, severing the tie of affection from our family members, you know, you could think that, well, that means I have to cut off all emotion, you know. But Prabhupada explains in the purport, and I want to read this if you don't mind.
Yes, Prabhu.
Because he clarifies that there's a difference between the affection for devotees or affection for the soul connection rather than the body connection. We're severing the tie of the bodily affection. So she says, Prabhupada says in the purport, her affection for the Pandavas and the Vrishnis is now not out of the range of devotional service, because the service of the Lord and the service of the devotees are identical. Sometimes service to the devotee is more valuable than service to the Lord. But here, the affection of Kunti Devi for the Pandavas and the Vrishnis was due to family relations. The tie of affection in terms of material relations is the relation of Maya, because the relations of the body or the mind are due to the influence of the external energy. The relations of the soul established in relation with the Supreme Soul are factual relations. When Kunti Devi wanted to cut off the family relation, she meant to cut off the relation of the skin. The skin relation is the cause of material bondage, but the relation of the soul is the cause of freedom. This relation of the soul to the soul can be established by the medium of the relation with the super soul. So basically it's saying there's 2 categories of affection, one based on the body and one based on the soul. Soul to soul through the medium of the super soul, the supreme soul. So she's meaning that she wants to sever the affection that is based on the body, so that only the soul affection remains.
Yes, Prabhu. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think that was pretty deep. You know, like one enhances spiritual, just like when Srila Prabhupada left the world. Those who had that affection, that spiritual affection to him, they enhanced their service. It didn't decrease. If it was a material affection, it would have the spiritual service that everyone did for the next 40 years would have decreased, but it increased. So that shows that it was a spiritual affection. So thank you, Prabhu, for sharing that. All right, Granth Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. I think we're ready now for Guru Puja. Hare Krishna. Thank you, everyone.